Once upon a time in a village of Achi, there lived a king named Obiora. He was married to a beautiful queen named Ugo, and they have 7 children together, 6 girls and a boy. The king and queen had the 6 girls first and performed many sacrifices to the gods of their land before they could conceive the prince, because none of the princesses would be able to take over the title of kingship from their father, according to the tradition of their village. The king loves his son and adores him so much, as he is to become heir to the throne after his reign. And he never allowed the prince to go out of the palace, as he feared that he might be abducted or harmed by his enemies. The princesses got married one after another to princes and noblemen from other villages, and they all left the palace, leaving the young prince alone all by himself. As years went by and the prince grew older, he became more curious about what life is outside the 4 walls of the big palace he had been caged in all his life. He doesn't have any friends or belong to any peer group, and he often wondered what it felt like to be a regular person. In a neighboring village called Uka, there also lived a wealthy chief called Ikemba and his wife Nkem. They were so wealthy that they had up to 100 workers in their yam barn. They have a daughter called Ego. Their niece EJ is also living with them after her parents passed on in an accident when she was 4 years old. The chief ordered his wife Nkem to take care of his niece EJ from the first day she was brought into their home after the incident. But somehow, Nkem felt EJ was in competition with her daughter Ego, so she tried her best to deny EJ of some privileges without her husband's knowledge. Ego also grew hostile towards EJ and started despising her, even when EJ tried to come close to her and pleaded that they act as sisters instead of rivals. Ego is beautiful and tall with a slender body, and she took pride in her beauty as a bragging right. EJ, on the other hand, is also very beautiful. She has a kind face and one of the most beautiful eyes anyone could behold. Additionally, she was very smart. She also goes to the yam barn to assist the boys in calculations, and they became very fond of her. EJ was always very busy and never took out time to attend functions and festivals in their village or neighboring villages, so she barely had any suitors coming for her hand in marriage. She spent most of her time attending to the house chores or assisting the boys in the yam barn. Ego, on the other hand, is the most sought-after maiden in their village. She was the star of every festival, dressed so beautifully, and always found her way to the front of the crowd, where she would be the center of attention. She was rejecting a lot of suitors from their village, as she told her parents that she would only get married to a prince or a nobleman. Unfortunately, the prince of their village, Oka, was way too young to be eligible for her, so she was always making her way to neighboring villages whenever she hears of any events, to be on the lookout for the princes and noblemen. Back in the village of Achi, King Obiora got really sick, and he was becoming too weak to handle the affairs of the land and his people. The elders suggested to him that he hands over the throne to his son, who has come of age. The king was eager to do that as soon as possible, but the elders reminded him that his son can only become the king once he gets married. The king became bothered about this because his son was never allowed to interact with anyone outside of the huge palace, and none of the villagers even knows what he looks like apart from his personal guards. The king shared the news of handing over the title of kingship with his son Elona. He also shared with him the conditions that comes with it, that he must get married first. The king suggested to his son that he would summon his chiefs and ask them to present their most beautiful daughters so that he can make a choice out of them. Prince Elona opposed the idea citing that he wants to search for his wife by himself. He begged his father, the king, to give him permission to go outside of the palace in search of his life partner. He told the king that he plans to wear a disguise and mingle with the villagers as a trader, and nobody can actually recognize him as he has been locked up within the palace walls since birth. He also said it would be a good way to get to know his future subjects before he becomes king. After giving it much thought, King Obiora decided to allow his prince to leave the palace and mingle with the villagers in search of a wife. The prince stripped himself of his royal costume and dressed down as a yam trader. He was snuck out of the palace by his guards, and they followed him up from a distance to ensure he does not get into any harm or trouble. Somehow, words leaked out from within the palace into the village of Achi and its neighboring villages that the prince of Achi will be going around the village for the first time, and he will be searching for a maiden to take home as his wife. All the eligible maidens in the village dressed up in their most beautiful wrappers and adornments, and they all came out in search of the prince. He must be dressed in the most luxurious wrappers and adorned with gold, some maidens discussed as they made their way to the stream.
Oh, I heard he is handsome and kind of shy, and he has never stepped foot outside of the palace. We have to be on the lookout for someone who seems shy or timid, and then handsome.
Some maidens teased as they also made their way to the market. It was the Eke market day of the village, so the market square was filled to the brim with traders from the village and outside of the village. So many young women were also in the market as a result of the rumor going around the village that the prince might walk past the market. So they all came out waiting for a well-adorned prince. Prince Elona was overwhelmed by the crowd and activities as he had never seen anything like it before. He decided to take a walk round the market while observing the bargaining, screaming, and laughter of the people as they went about their trade. As he made his rounds around the market, he came across one trader who he couldn't take his eyes off of. He watched her from a distance as she bargained with her customers and sold to them with a beaming smile on her face. He was so mesmerized by her beauty and charming aura that he continued to watch the young lady from a distance. As night fell, the traders were packing up and leaving one after another. The prince, still disguised, joined the crowd to find his way and sneak back into the palace. He got mixed up in the crowd and missed his way home. Prince Elona sighted a path that he felt was familiar somehow and went down that path until he fell into a ditch filled with cow dung meant for the crops. He was drenched and reeked badly. He also sustained some bruises on his knees and elbow. By this time it was already late, and he was lost and very much injured. He stayed by the deserted roadside and said a silent prayer to the gods for a helper to come. After some minutes, he saw a young lady walking towards his direction with a basket on her head. When she got closer, he recognized her as the lady he saw in the market, who was beautiful and cheerful towards her customers. The prince walked up to her and introduced himself as Nwora, a trader from Achi. The girl also introduced herself as EJ. The prince told EJ that he was lost and he is trying to find his way back to Achi. EJ told the prince that Achi was a bit far from where they are, and he might miss his way again if he attempts to go alone that night. She suggested to the young man to follow her back to where she lives so he can spend the night there and find his way back by morning. The prince was amazed at her kind heart and followed EJ back to her house. When they got to their village, Uka, EJ took the strange man he brought home to her uncle and his family. She introduced the man and explained his predicament to her uncle, who took pity on the man and agreed to let him spend the night. Ego, their daughter, objected to the suggestion, citing that words could go round the village that a dirty and strange man is in their compound, and that could limit her chances of getting wealthy and noble suitors. Chief Ikemba chided his daughter and insisted that the young man can pass the night in their compound. EJ took the prince to the hut where he would sleep for the night, drew him a bath, brought him dinner, and tended to his wound. The prince was totally amazed by her beauty and fell deeply in love with her. The next morning, EJ accompanied the strange man to the road closer to Achi and directed him on the way to go in order to arrive safely at his village. When the prince got back to the palace, King Obiora, who was distraught as a result of his disappearance, was overjoyed. Prince Elona told his father all about his encounter with a beautiful maiden. He also announced to his father that he would like to go back and ask for EJ's hand in marriage. Few days later, the prince dressed down in his disguised attire and snuck out of the palace again. He headed down the road leading to Uka village. When he got to EJ's compound, he met her uncle and mentioned his intention of marrying his niece EJ. Chief Ikemba was surprised that a poor man would have the confidence to come and ask for his niece's hand in marriage. The prince explained that he is a yam trader and he would take care of his niece. Ego sighed in disbelief, raining abuses on EJ for bringing bad luck to their compound. Chief Ikemba summoned EJ to the hut where they were sitting. When EJ saw Nwora, the disguised prince, she smiled from ear to ear. She agreed to marry the young man without hesitation. Ego expressed her disappointment at her choice and further buttressed that only a noble man is worthy of having her hand in marriage. The prince returned to his village, promising to come back with his people on the next market day to perform the marriage rites and take his wife home. On the next market day, the king of Achi, his elders, and some chiefs accompanied Priest Elona to Uka village to go perform the marriage rites and bring their wife home. When they got to Chief Agu's compound in Uka, Ego hastily dressed in her beautiful wrapper and adorned herself, thinking the royal family was there for her. She couldn't recognize the prince as Nwora the trader, as he was now dressed in a royal costume with his face mostly covered. Chief Agu welcomed the king of Achi and his entourage and inquired why they journeyed all the way to his compound. He also didn't recognize the prince as the young man who asked for his niece's hand in marriage. The king announced that they came for EJ's hand in marriage. Ego was so furious that she loudly announced that EJ had agreed to marry a poor trader from Achi, and that makes her ineligible to be the prince's wife. EJ corroborated the announcement and apologized to the king and the prince. Prince Elona got up from his seat and moved closer to EJ. He unveiled his face to her. Everyone was thrown into shock. The prince embraced EJ and told the story of why he was dressed like a pauper when they met previously. He knelt and proposed again to EJ in front of everyone, and she agreed with tears in her eyes. Ego and her mother stormed out of the hut in shame. EJ was dressed up by the palace maidens and adorned with the beautiful wrappers the prince brought with him. The marriage rites were performed, and afterwards, EJ followed her husband, the crown prince of Achi, back to his palace, and they lived happily for a very long time.